Welcome to the Unstuck Podcast.
Hey everyone.
Today we're going to talk about victimization and what it means to take that upon yourself and what can you do about it. It's a really interesting topic. If you were listening to last week's podcast, which I strongly suggest you do, we talked about uh, bitterness, and these two go together very, very well. They tend to go hand in hand. And uh,
What's the difference between them, Cameron? How would you describe that?
I would say victimization is the identity you try to assume, while bitterness is the action you take when you're feeling like a victim. But you can also have bitterness in other situations too. But bitterness, I believe, is the action. It's the result.
So victim is a noun and bitterness is a verb. It's an action that you do.
I think so.
That's a good way to describe it. Um, so before we kind of kick off into this, we wanted to go over the difference between being victimized and a victim so that we're 100% clear, because this is a very sensitive topic and one that we want to approach delicately, but also want to be honest and frank about it, because we're not doing ourselves any favors when we don't see it clearly.
Yeah, and it's also a very subtle. It's a very subtle condition that we I would say most people take on the position of victim at least a little bit of their time in life. Like it's just something that we do very naturally. Um, as human beings, we want to a lot of times taking ownership and full responsibility of things can be very difficult. And anyways, yeah. So let's talk more about that.
So the difference between victimized and victimhood, or victim, I should say. Victimized is when something happens to you, when there is a wrong, either by somebody or something or anything that happens that affects your life in a negative way, a traumatic way, a way that causes you distress, disorganizes you, etc. And I think it's really important that we know that's a real thing. Like you can't choose out of that in life. It happens. But to contrast that with victim, that's an identity, just like Cameron was saying, that you take on after something has happened. So you are victimized while the thing is happening to you or around you that's affecting you. But once that passes, what we want to talk about today is the identity that you choose into after that happens. Because that's a difference between being a victim for life or a victor in your life. And I think that's where our control lies. That's where our agency lies. That's where the ability to find happiness and peace, forgiveness, all of the things that healing come from the choice that we make after something happens to us that we cannot control. Yeah. So with that being said, it's an important concept to understand that we really do have a lot of choice surrounding how things end up and how we choose to view ourselves and how we teach others to view us. And when we make empowering decisions to not be a victim, but a victor, it doesn't take away from something that's happened to us. So I think sometimes we're afraid that if we get over it, it might, or we forgive or we move on, it means like it's okay that it happened. And I think it's important to understand that that's not the case, that it's still something that is part of your history. It's part of your story. And it doesn't remove what happened to you by choosing something better. I think a lot of people, would you say, hold on to the bad or the wrongs that happen, because if they let go of it, it's as if it's almost like saying it's okay.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't matter. And really, when we do that, we're only hurting ourselves. It's
Yeah.
the whole principle of forgiveness that you hear talked about often. It's not forgiveness isn't for the person you're forgiving, it's for yourself. It's to take away the burden of of the burden that it placed upon you.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with removing victim as a title. Um, and we often do this. I'm a victim of this. We just prescribe this about ourselves, and then it ends up shaping how others see us, how we see us. It shapes how much power we feel that we personally have to change our lives and do better. It limits us when we place victim as a title to describe who we are, instead of looking at it simply as, I was victimized in this act, but I choose who I am. I choose how this affects me. I choose to rise above and be better.
Yeah. And I know we are focusing on, I think, more direct victimization and then taking on victim, but we take on victim in a lot of other subtle ways too, to our circumstances, to even just moment to moment. You know, you can see it with your kids, right? Like you'll ask them to clean up something, and then it's, well, this person was standing in my way. You know, they couldn't. That was their reason, right? We do this. We're very prone to taking on these identities of victimization really quickly, to remove ownership of our own power to act and to do things.
Yeah, and we're actually going to talk about that a little bit more later, and why we do that, what the psychology behind why we do that, because it's an interesting thing that we do. It's comforting to do it. But before we go there, how long? So we talk about victimization and something that happens to you that's outside of your control, something that is traumatizing, and I think that's where a lot of the sensitivity to this topic ends up, is when some pretty horrific things happen to people all the time. And the last thing we wanted to do is minimize how difficult and awful some of these circumstances can be, and some of them are just so above and beyond what we can even comprehend. I just want to be clear that we're not talking about that when it comes to agency and choice about who you want to be. But what we're talking about is, once that is past, once you've gotten yourself to a safe space and you're working on the healing, and a key part of healing comes with the realization and understanding that victim is a title you can choose into, or you can choose something different. And to be really careful what you choose to do with those circumstances. Do you want to be seen as somebody that has been damaged and hurt? Do you want to feel damaged and hurt for the rest of your life? Because when we put this title on ourselves as if it means something about who we are, instead of something that happened to us.
I think that's a really interesting point. I think kind of as human nature, we tend to we want to have an identity, and I think it's good. It's good to have an identity, but I think we have to be careful of what we pick as our identity, and we can very often pick portions of our identity, either as a victim or other places that are probably not as beneficial, that we don't even realize we're doing it. But you can be the person who has back problems. You can be the person who has had this bad thing happen to them, and you don't realize it, but by assuming that identity, you'll hold on to it, even if it's not even something you like. And it's very prevalent. I strongly say to anybody listening to this, think about portions of your life where you're having negative results, and look into this, because it can really be a part of your life where you're choosing an identity, choosing a part of yourself to be what you present to the world, and it's the way you know how to do it, and it can be even something in a way that you don't really like.
And cut yourself some slack, because so much of it is unconscious. We don't know to do differently. But this is the goal of what we're trying to talk about here, is to help for those that don't know or don't understand that we're like naturally do this, like I think this is just kind of biologically built into us.
Oh
You're
yeah.
almost like a rare species if you don't naturally start labeling yourself in negative ways. As you were talking, Cameron, I was just thinking of one of the reasons why we both started doing addiction recovery classes. One for the spouse, that's what I took, and then Cameron took the one for um, the pornography addiction. And one of the things that um, I didn't love, and then I know after talking to you that you weren't very fond of either, was like how you introduced yourself in the class every week, right? I have this addiction, or I am an addict, as the label. And um, you know, Cameron's goal and my hope for him as well was that like this was something that he had experienced and that he could rise above, and it could be something of in his past.
And it wasn't explicitly taught, but it it was prevalent.
Yeah. Or it wasn't required that you said it.
No.
What you mean.
Right.
But we were hoping that it could be something that he could outgrow and he could rise above, and this weakness could become a strength, because we have this, this mindset and belief that that's possible. And so it just felt really wrong to go to a meeting where you're trying to do that. Everyone's trying to get better and heal, and to just label yourself as that.
It's not wrong to acknowledge the thing, but it might have been better. It might be more positive to say that someone who is dealing with or used to or experiencing or well, we're not saying you to deny things that are actually happening, but how you identify with it will be how you identify with yourself as well, and it's really important.
Yeah. And so for at least for us, because maybe there is somebody that would really benefit from that kind of wake up call of I'm an addict, and maybe that actually is a helpful
Sure, temporarily.
part of that. But you always get to decide who you are. So just know that, like, if you need that label to help move you to the next level, great. But know that that label gets to be what you decide it is, always.
I like that.
You are in control of that, and as soon as it's no longer serving you to be a victim, be an addict, be whatever it is that you've labeled yourself, you can change. You don't have to stay that forever. We are moldable and changeable beings, despite all of the things we want to say that change is hard and people don't change. Those are lies, because people do every day. But it's not. It takes a lot of conscious effort and thought and deliberate action and conscious living to do it. But it's totally possible.
Totally, and that really is the point of this conversation we're having with you right now. It is about identifying places in your life where you may be feeling that you've surrendered your will and ability to be anything different, and recognizing that you're in control. You're in power of how you define yourself and your choices you make in the moment. We have another podcast talking about the now that I would go look at to also talk about that, how your power is right now, and how you define yourself is right now, and being a victim, surrendering that choice to something in a circumstance around you is just not a good plan.
Yeah. I wanted to touch too on how do you know when it's time to start making that decision, because there's that period of time where you're dealing with the aftermath of
Decision for what?
Just decision of who you are, who you want to
Oh,
be.
yeah.
Because you have like maybe a situation that happens, and it completely disrupts your life, and you're dealing with just the repercussions, the aftermath, the trauma that might come from it. And some people are able to make decisions very quickly that this doesn't mean anything about me. I am an agent in my life. I can make decisions to influence the results that I want, and they're able to move on very quickly. And some people, it takes a little bit longer. I don't think there's any one right period of time to process and heal and mourn a loss or grieve, circumstance that has thrown you completely, off of your, just thrown you out of whack, I guess. And but there comes a point where we can languish a long time because we don't know what to do next. And so what I think the key is, I've been thinking about, like, what would I advise somebody to do? Like, how would you know when, because it's not like the hurting just stops one day and then, like, oh, now that means I'm ready to make a choice. The choice usually comes before the hurt goes away, because it's part of your healing. Identifying who you are and stepping into that person, and that personal power that comes with it actually is part of the healing process that helps you feel better. So it's not like there's a clear line of, I'm feel better, it's time to choose something different. Um, but what I would say is, when you find yourself making excuses for why you're showing up different in life, um, or thinking to this thing as the reason why you can't do this or that, or be, or keep commitments, or anything, when you feel like you are stuck because of this event in your life or something that happened to you, is a time where I think, like you recognize that you're stuck, is really what I'm trying to say. When you recognize that you're stuck, it's definitely the time, and it's probably past time, that you make a decision about who you are and what this means about you. Um, Otherwise you might languish in that cycle of victimhood for way longer than is necessary, and it will cause a lot more pain and heartache and complicate your life, because whatever happened to you, the person who hurt you or offended you, it's like they still have power over you. And by choosing into becoming a victor, no matter what happens to you, you're taking that power out of their hands and putting it back in your own life. And the faster you can do that, faster you can be aware that you have a choice. The soonest time you actually, I think that's probably the answer. The soonest time you can understand and recognize that you have a choice, take action then. That's the best time. It's not gauged by pain or how well you feel you've gotten over something. It's when you understand and can remember that you have a choice, it's time to take action on that. And I wanted to kind of give some personal experiences with that, just as a way to um, give an example. Um, I remember, and for me, thankfully, I was able to do this pretty much early on, right after Cameron disclosed the pornography addiction to me. Um, I had really had like about a day, what was it, like maybe a day and a half of just like in and out of tears. I felt numb. I didn't know what to do. Um, I was hurting a lot. And so I turned to my coach. I've talked about this in our story previously. I turned to my coach, and I asked for a coaching session and a breakthrough. It's a method, and we're gonna go more into what breakthrough is next episode. But um after that breakthrough, I was able to get really clear on what I wanted and who I wanted to be. And despite the fact that I totally felt like a victim, and I didn't move out of feeling like a victim for quite a while, I felt very resentful for the fact that I had, followed all the rules that I thought were going to protect me from a situation like this. And even then, I still ended up with it. And I was definitely feeling like some bitterness and like a victim to my circumstances, and to Cameron's choices. And so as soon as I had that breakthrough where I remembered that I am a person who has choice, I am I can influence my circumstances, but I also am independent of other people's. And then I remembered that I knew that I love him, and I chose him, and I still want him, and I want to help him. And so it was this pivotal moment where I was able to, it's not like it healed everything. It's not like it made everything go away or everything became easy overnight, but I stepped out of victimhood. And I shouldn't say completely, because I went back and forth into it, but I stepped out of that. Like, I wasn't accepting that title anymore. Does that make sense? It wasn't something that I wanted. And so whenever I went back to it, it was obvious that that was a pain point to push me back into a healthier space again. Um, and so So from that point forward, I knew I wanted to influence my circumstances, and I wanted to show up in love and help the person that I cared about. Because if I let this be about me and I let myself get bitter and I let myself feel like, everything was lost, then everything would be. And I didn't want that result. And while I didn't know how to get there yet, I knew better was possible. And so I started on that path. And all of the decisions I made, you know, every day, and then I not like, I had weak points. I went back a little bit, but then I always knew where I was going after that was over, or in the middle of that, so I could do better. And it's led me to a very much healthier, much happier place. I do not feel like a victim anymore. In fact, I have a lot of gratitude for the way everything happened. I see God's hand in it. I see the blessings that have come from it, and not just for me, but I also see how it's helped Cameron become a stronger, happier, healthier, better person because of this trial. And without it, I don't know that we would be where we're at. I don't know that we would have learned or had the sometimes you just have to hit like a wall and completely, be knocked off your feet to get back up and realize, like, hey, I wasn't going the direction I thought I was or where I wanted to go. And that's what that did for us.
I do think that's a great way to look at it, the providential way to look at it. One of the quickest ways to get out of the negative mindset uh, and victimization, feeling of victimization, is to use hope and gratitude. Gratitude is for your past, and hope is for your future. And having those two combined, when you can bring those to bear, they really are a wonderful way to dissipate a lot of that feeling.
Cameron, you mentioned that you wanted to share your story about your most recent
Mm,
medical diagnosis, and how this principle factors into that story.
okay. Yeah. So this is an interesting way to look at being a victim, but um, I had this pattern of pornography for many, 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 many years, and I also had a pattern of chronic pain. Um, that I went to so many doctors to look at bad headaches and some other things, and everybody thought they knew what it was, and I could never seem to find any real relief. And
The only time he had relief was when we did some acupuncture for some time that seemed to alleviate some of the symptoms.
it was hard to find a practitioner who was good. And anyways, I just struggled with this for a very long time. And when disclosure happened, when T-Day came around, uh, I was still experiencing all this stuff, and uh, went through the whole process and found a lot of healing through becoming honest, taking ownership, and from going from the identity of addict to the identity of victorious over addiction, taking that identity on, it's been amazing. But I still had all those headaches. I still had all those problems.
And you said it was like the one thing left that.
Yeah, like I felt like my whole life, like I got so much stuff under control, and this was the huge thing, and these headaches that were still just coming around. And so just recently, a friend of ours was opening up kind of a health clinic, and they gave us a deal on.
Let's give a shout out
Oh yeah,
to Pure Life Medical in Orem.
yeah,
A great new facility. They've got other locations, but
yeah,
gotta highly recommend the Orem location. Great
yeah,
staff and providers there.
yeah. So they helped us out getting a pretty comprehensive blood panel, which I've never in my life had done. I don't know why. We just hadn't. And
Well, and even if you had, because I'd done one before myself, like medical doctors or general practitioners don't really know how to read them. I mean, not that this actually affected your results, but
right,
they often don't know how to read them for like what's optimal health is. It's just this range of normal, which could be like severely unhealthy to really healthy, and it's like it's not going to give you optimal an
Right.
understanding of what's optimal and where you're at.
So they took that with that eye, but one thing that stood out very, very high on mine is that I most definitely have Hashimoto's disease, which would lead to hypothyroidism. I didn't know this.
So basically, his thyroid is not his
Underproducing.
body is fighting his thyroid as if it's a foreign um, entity. Like it's creating so many antibodies to like fight off his thyroid, so he's not producing
Yeah.
enough thyroid for his body.
So I just learned this a few days ago, and so this floored me. And so since then I've been interested in looking at it, and I'm hoping, I do not know yet if it's tied to these headaches, but from what I've looked into, it very well could be.
Well, we researched
Thyroid
thyroid
headaches,
headaches,
yeah,
and they literally like spell out exactly
exactly what I'm
what he's
experiencing.
been experiencing, which is really interesting because I don't think we found anything quite like that.
So the point of this whole story is, I one of the indications of thyroid problems is that you'll self-medicate with addictions, and I didn't know that this really could have been part of the story. There's a bunch of other things that since I've been looking into this that really do start to make the things line up to show that I've had this for a while, and I didn't realize. Probably since I was a teenager, I've been experiencing these problems.
Which is when
Yeah,
you're
and it's very common. People don't know that they have Hashimoto's for that long, and until it progresses when they get in later in life. And so I was just really, really glad that we caught it when we did, and I don't have any of the more severe symptoms. But anyways, my point of saying this is, if I had had that diagnosis earlier, I very easily could have taken on the identity of the victim of this disease. And why not, right? I have it. It has these symptoms. This was the reason why. And while it could be a reason why things were happening in my life this way, by not taking ownership in that way, I do feel I fortunately and providently, I see it this way, have a different perspective where I could see I made it through this and through a lot of healing. I believe full healing, without knowing that the cause of it might have had
or a
a big,
contributing factor.
or at least a strong contributing factor could have been here. I'm so glad that I didn't know that. And I think,
And instead of it providing like an excuse or I'm a victim to this disease,
yes,
you now are a victor of your story because you did something incredibly thought was impossible, difficult to do, you mastered it, and now you have this information that instead of giving you like a reason why or an excuse is actually one that just helps you have some self-compassion
yeah,
and a greater perspective and now a solution to help you, heal even
right,
further.
yeah,
Um, and it really is all how you look at it. God, I guess God could have told him this years ago, and just looking to at your life and from a lens of faith, that things happen the way they happen the way that they do for a reason and a purpose. It's not like God's sitting there dictating what bad things happen to us, but he understands it all, and I think he helps organize our lives in such a way that things happen in the way that they do for optimal growth and well-being, and I should say optimal growth, because well-being is sometimes it's hard,
it's a little
right?
subjective too.
But our optimal growth, because of how we can learn, and it's
Right,
what we can learn from it and what we can do with what we are given and take it and make something better out of it. Like, for example, what happened with us, like, I don't know that I could have even processed sitting here talking to you on the camera, that first day when I found out. But I'm so grateful because what it did was we took this experience and realized and recognized that if Cameron was suffering, as somebody who was genuinely trying to be as a good person, and he hated this part of himself, wanted to be better, didn't know how, felt so stuck, felt alone, felt all the horrible things, right? He wasn't alone. There are so many more people out there that are struggling and dealing with the exact same thing he was. And if we could take this experience and provide, someone else just the comfort of knowing you're not alone, and here are some things that helped, that made it worth it. And so what we're doing right here, this podcast, is part of our perfect learning and growth. Um, and why we're grateful things happened the way that they did. All right. Let's talk a little bit about why we like victimhood so much. And I say that not as in like logically, of course we know. No one sits there and says, I like being a
And
victim.
it's
It is,
very easy to identify in others. I,
yeah,
I strongly suggest you
don't do
try to
it.
find it in yourself.
Yeah. Don't
Don't try
diagnose
to
someone else.
diagnose somebody else. Yes.
Um, yeah, no one's sitting there saying, I choose to be a victim. I like being a victim. This is the identity I want to have. We're not suggesting that.
Subconsciously, we do
But
say,
subconsciously we get there, we get payoff or payout. We are getting something from this identity. And let's talk about what that is, because I think the more that we understand that why we do it, we can then like question ourselves, well, what am I getting out of this? So one of the first things that I've thought of when it comes to why we do this is that it's somewhat soothing. And it takes our personal accountability kind of off the table. When we can say that, this isn't my fault because this and this happened to me, um, then it alleviates the pressure of needing to have done better than we did. Um, so for example, and gosh, I'm guilty of this. I need to do better about this example than I have. But like being late for something, right? Let's just take something really benign like that. Like, oh, I hit traffic. Like, I can't tell you, like, I'm an appointment and I did not leave the house. In
well,
fact, this is
well,
Karen.
tell them about when we go to church,
What?
like how we noticed we were the same.
Oh, yeah. No matter what time our church started, we were always the same amount of late.
It didn't matter how many
It could
kids we
be,
had, or
or if it was 9 a.m. versus 1 p.m.
we
or
just somehow were
whatever.
the exact same amount each time.
Yeah. But somehow, like if I'm arriving late to an appointment, if I say, oh, the traffic was terrible, it alleviates the pressure. They don't have to know that I left 5 minutes too late from my house and then hit traffic. And so it just takes that pressure off of you for accountability. Like, we don't like accountability. Accountability is scary. We don't want to have it. And so victimhood really is an excellent way to remove accountability from our lives. This reminded me, I was talking to Cameron about it the other morning. I was thinking about an interview that I heard with Elizabeth Smart after she was rescued, and her mom said to her, Elizabeth, this man took, I think it was 9 months of her life, if I'm remembering correctly, but this man took 9 months of your life. Um, he's behind bars now. I'm doing a bad job of reiterating this, but essentially, he took 9 months of your life. Don't give him another second. Um, and I love that because it would be so easy to say to her this, and I'm sure, and it's important for them to know this isn't your fault. What he did was so wrong. But I love that from the very beginning, she set this intention and talked to her daughter about, no, it was horrific what happened to her, but it's over now and don't let him have any more. She immediately removed victimhood from the identity of her daughter and said, this is in your hands. You get to choose what your life looks like from now on. And I think it's evident that the way they handled that, her parents handled the situation. Look at what she's doing today. She's married, a mother to children, and she has her own nonprofit organization that assists and helps others who are victims of sexual abuse. And it's just phenomenal. Like, this girl turned a very awful, unthinkable, like most of us will never ever have to experience something like that. And she became a victor of her own story, and she is now helping so many people. And so I think that's what it is. Most of all, it soothes us, it removes our accountability, and life's easier. It's just about life being easier. And so I think as we're aware that that's something we commonly do, we can make better decisions when we find ourselves making excuses for why we're doing what we're doing based on something else that's outside of our control. Because the moment you remember that you are a free agent in your own life and that you have control and influence over your results and you decide who you want to be and who you are identified as, um, you get your power back. And I don't know that it's for everybody, honestly, Cameron. And I hesitate to say this because I don't want to give anyone like, I don't want to unintentionally say give someone an out, but there's a lot of just personal accountability and responsibility that comes when you acknowledge that you have agency. And I think that's why it's such an important factor in our human existence here and why we fight for it and also fight against it so strongly. Not everybody wants it. But if you have a desire for a great life and to do amazing things and to make a difference.
Well, what is the fruit of taking responsibility? It sounds obvious, but I'm not sure it is to everyone, Heather. What's at the end of that road? If you stop being a victim and you take responsibility and ownership of your own actions and change.
Well, I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind, and I'll just use the Elizabeth Smart situation again, and I know it's a sensitive topic, but so many things could have happened there. She could have, ended up reclusive and scared of life and small and just not lived a life, stayed miserable and upset and bitter and angry. That's one route, right? That could have happened. And you see happen with victims of abuse like that. Another route is, oftentimes sexual abuse it repeats. It's a cycle. It could have been repeated. She could have turned into something completely different based on decisions she made about herself and her worth after that event. And then you have who she became today. Somebody who is helping others and living a fulfilling life. And I don't know her personally, but I imagine it's a much happier life than those other two options that were potential paths for anybody in a circumstance like that. What's the payoff? I mean, I don't know. I think it comes down to philosophy in life. For me, I believe that this life is made for us to learn how to become our best selves and become more like our Father in heaven, our parents in heaven. And for me, helping others, making a difference, leaving an impact, leaving the world a little bit better than where it was before, enjoying some of the pleasures and lovely things of life. All of these things require me to make choices about who I am and how I show up in life. And that's the fruit. So what do you want in life? I think that you got to answer that for yourself.
I think that's very similar to what I was thinking. The one thing I've always thought of is I try to spend most of my energy when I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I do know what I want to happen, by making myself available and by making decisions that make the opportunities for the thing I want to happen, or for anything good to happen, make them possible. So for instance, if you are making choices to do something that's going to injure you or get you put in jail, you're making the choices that will limit you later. You're choosing out of opportunities for something better to happen if anything comes along. And so I think by choosing out of victimhood, by putting power into yourself, one of the payoffs is you automatically start making decisions that make you available to better opportunities in life as they appear. And they happen in all different ways. It could be financial, it could be relationship, it could be vocationally. All sorts of things show up in your life when you are in a position to receive them. And I think that's what this does. When taking yourself out of victimization, you become able to receive good things that come your way.
And you can accept them too in all the different packages they might show up in. I remember sitting in one of our therapy sessions, and we were talking about what was going on in our lives before the disclosure happened, and we were telling him about all the ways we were praying to progress. Like we had we had goals to begin investing in real estate, and just changing our cards and our our future as we prepare for later years in life, and all the things we were thinking about and doing differently and improving. And then I remember him saying, like, our therapist saying, well, so then you prayed for this to happen. Like, you actually prayed and wanted this to happen. I'm like, I guess so, right? Because you open when you take those steps to become better, to change, and to do more, you open yourself up for all the opportunities, and some come dressed in some difficult wrapping. Um, and I think, like, man, for so many years, I actually was so scared of that, and it actually limited my desire for growth, because I knew that it could mean I might,
That's a good
like,
thing to
worst
talk
case
about,
scenario.
Heather. That's a good thing to talk about. What are some things that keep you from wanting to take that ownership and staying in the victim
Yeah,
mindset?
I would go to, like, the worst case scenario. Well, if I got really super spiritual and super strong and amazing, then God would have to give me a challenge like losing a child or a spouse, and I would just be afraid of that. And so it would limit my desire to grow, and I would stunt myself. And what I'm realizing now is that even when those things happen, even when difficult, hard days happen, and granted, I didn't lose a child, or Cameron, but I did lose a reality that I thought was real, and that I actually had based my worth on, and, like, it really turned me upside down. I had to reevaluate how I understood and viewed myself, God, why things happen the way they do. Like, it really turned everything upside down for me. But by doing the work and not allowing it to just destroy me, and knowing I could be better and I could learn and I could heal, I knew that was true. I've opened up the doors for so many more things. Like, it's so amazing, actually, just, lately, as we've made these breakthroughs with our healing journey, how many opportunities and things have opened up for just new paths that I just didn't see coming. And so I don't know even what to say, because if you're in the space that I was in, you might even be more afraid of hearing what I just said. Um, but can I just testify and say that God loves you, and He wants your happiness and your growth and your well-being more than you do for yourself. And His plan is always better than the one that you can construct for yourself, if you trust Him and lean into that, and you keep finding a way to connect and understand Him and allow Him to love you. And that's the key to curing yourself from that kind of impasse where you're just stunting yourself because you're terrified of what growth means for you.
Yeah. And of my own experience, I can say something similar. I can tell you that looking back at all the things that have happened and how they've transpired in our lives, I don't know how to look at them in a space that says I wish they hadn't happened. I can tell you I don't want to go through a lot of these things again. It was very difficult and it was a struggle. I think that I don't think there's anything wrong with saying I wish it could be something different in the future. In fact, I would say you really should have different results in the future if you're actually learning from your past. But I can tell you that by moving out of victimization and getting into ownership of how I want it to be, and choosing and getting fully honest with yourself and with others around you, it really does produce a growth and a power that is unmatched. And you'll realize that the things that happened to you, even things that were very detrimental at the moment that they happened, they produce in you a unique and acute position that not many other people might be able to understand, and allows you to help people in ways that not other people can as well. And each one of us, I think, are unique in that way, and our different ways of having problems and things that we're overcoming. See yourself that way, because I think that will help you gain the power to overcome it.
So would you say, Cameron, then, that the years, decades of battle and heartbreak and a pain that came from the unwanted porn
And
path,
now
like,
the
pattern.
disease.
But what I'm saying is, like, if you had to trade what you've learned and then how our relationship has changed and developed for the better, Like if you had to exchange those, would you give that up? Or like, so what I'm hearing you say is that it's been worth it.
Oh, by far and away, it has been worth it. I I I still sometimes don't like it, and I'll have my moments still, but it far and away has been an improvement for my life to have this experience. And I can see that by taking on the identity as someone victorious over addiction, and that I'm in the process of still being victorious over it, I can help others, and I wouldn't change it. And the further into this whole process we've been getting, the more I feel that way. It just seems like it's perfect.
Um, Before we wrap up, I just wanted to like kind of, I think, conclude on one more point. Choosing out of victimhood essentially requires ownership of our own life. Um, no one else can make you a certain way. I talk to my kids about this when like they act out of anger, like someone and they we have two boys right now that like I swear I think they're just at each other's throats. They're 3 years apart and they just find ways to irritate each other. And sometimes, someone will react in anger and do something mean or say something um unkind and they'll tell me as an excuse, well, they did this. And I'm like, well, did they make you do that to them? Like, can anyone make you react this way? And what I'm trying to do is say like, yeah, something happened that hurt. Something happened that you didn't like. Something happened that was uncomfortable or mean and it wasn't fair. But no one made you do what you do. You own what you do. You own who you are. You own how you teach other people to treat you. That's you. And so stepping out of victimhood requires you owning your own life and understanding that you can own your own life. You are not a victim to how other people see you or treat you or what they do to you. If that were the case, then I would forever just be like this broken woman who was betrayed by her husband and was lied to, and now I can't trust him, and now I'm going to have to wonder for the rest of my life if I'm just going to be hurt again. And like, what kind of life does that even sound like for me? I don't want that life. I can't control him. I mean, sure, right? You could go back. You could do something worse. Like, that is something that you have to own. But I own who I am. And I am not a victim. I am somebody that is strong. I am somebody that is forgiving. I am somebody that works hard for what I want. And I will do what it takes to do my part to achieve what I want. And thankfully, I am so grateful. One of my biggest blessings in this whole thing with everything that happened with us is that that's also what you wanted. And the beautiful thing is I knew that before. Like you were on that path before. You just struggled to know how to fix this one part. And how what a blessing it is that we could do this together, and not everybody has that blessing. And I understand and acknowledge that. But it doesn't matter. If you weren't showing up that way, I might have to make some hard decisions. My life might look a whole lot different. I might be in a different space, or I might have to move on if you were uncaring or not wanting to change or unwilling to work with me. But I still wouldn't have to be a victim. I would still be the agent of my own life, owning my decisions. I had a decision to marry you, and I had a decision whether I stayed or not. And I chose to stay, and I own that, and I'm working for what I want. And if I decided to leave, some people do, like, and I'm not going to judge anybody for that decision. In fact, a lot of people do feel like that is worthy of leaving over, and then they own that decision. But they're not a victim. They have circumstances now that they have to deal with that are different, but they're not a victim to them unless they want to be. And so owning your own life is scary. It puts the responsibility on you.
It's so rewarding.
But you're going to live a happier, more fulfilling,
So much
adjusted
better.
life if you take ownership versus just you're a victim to circumstance and other people. And what an unhappy way to live. And so that's why we wanted to talk about victimhood today. especially we're coming right off of the bitterness, because bitterness is how we choose to act, in spite of circumstances or because of circumstances. But
If
victimhood is who we choose to be.
yeah, if bitterness is the pill that we like to take, victimization is the alcohol you chase it down with.
Yeah.
I mean, they go together very well, and it's really important to choose out of them, to choose your own personal power. What were the P's that you have in Breakthrough for new beliefs?
Oh, the 4 P's.
Yeah,
Personal, positive, powerful, and present.
yeah. Our beliefs should be personal, positive, powerful, and present. And I think that helps you understand that you have the power to act and stay out of victimhood.
Beliefs about ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with that being said, we'll leave you with some homework and then say good night. I guess it's night for us. I don't know if you're watching in the morning, but our homework is, number 1, acknowledge choice, that you are an agent in your own life. That's the first step. It's kind of like, it reminds me of the first step in, addiction recovery programs is acknowledging that you have a problem. So acknowledge, and this feels a lot more positive. Acknowledge that you actually are the agent in your own life. You have choice. You get to decide and create and craft your life, not anybody else. And if other people are doing it, unless you are literally under duress and your actions are, and some people are, but not talking about those, unless that's happening, you are still making the choice to allow other people's opinions and actions to direct and dictate your life. So that's still a choice. So acknowledge the choice. Number 2, make a decision about who you want to be. If you're not a victim, who are you? Oftentimes when I work with clients and we talk about new beliefs for themselves, sometimes people like to try and do the I'm not this or that. And so my follow-up question always is, well, if you're not that, what are you? Because we can't walk around life wondering, like saying, I'm not something. That's not an identity. What are you? Who are you? Who do you want to be? How do you want to see yourself? So, and then number 3, take action towards that goal. Take a next step. And what that is that's between you and God. Check in with intuition, pray, ask for guidance on that. You will receive it. So trusting what that is, and then taking that next step, and then taking the next one. You don't have to fight it all off in one sitting. It's not something that you're going to change overnight, but every day making choices towards that goal and taking that next step, you're going to climb. It's a long ways sometimes when you're at the bottom stair, looking at the top of the stairwell, but one step at a time gets you to where you want to go. Okay, so number 1, acknowledge that you are an agent in your own life and you have choice. Number 2, make a decision about who you want to be. And then number 3, take action. Do something, an inspired next step to start creating that life. And so next week, just as a little preview, we're going to talk more about what breakthrough is. I've mentioned it multiple times as we've chatted about. This is the kind of coaching that I do. It's a process. We're going to go through what it is, talk about it and how it's helped me, and others that I've worked with, and hopefully give you an extra tool that might be benefit in your life.
Yeah, but don't wait for it. Do these things first. But Breakthrough has a wonderful way of unearthing a little bit more than you thought was there. Yeah. But come prepared with what you think is there.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. We hope you have a great day or night, or whenever you're watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.